Welcome to another video demonstrating how to set up a Windows network. In the previous video we installed Windows 2003 Server and configured it to be a domain controller. The previous video and ended up actually having this server being a domain controller. Okay, now just to remind everyone that a domain controller allows access to resources on the domain or network. It holds centralized user accounts and security policies, and obviously can be used as a file server and a print server as well. Okay, today we'll be adding clients to our network, and I'm going to demonstrate using three different Windows client operating systems. The first one we'll be using is Windows 2000 Professional, the one I'm actually sitting on now. We'll also look at XP Pro and Vista Business as well. Okay, so to start with, this is a fresh install of Windows 2000 Professional. I've configured the network card, I've given it an appropriate IP address, so we're ready to start. I'm going to click on Start, and you can see here that I'm actually logged in as the administrator. I'm also going to go to my computer and right click and go down to Properties, and within System Properties I'm going to go to the second tab, the Network Identification tab, and here you can see the full computer name. Now this is the name we gave it when we actually installed the operating system, and the computer is just called Win2000. It's also got a work group, and the work group name is Workgroup. This was also set up when we installed it. Now just to remind everyone that a work group is a peer-to-peer network, so it's a network where each computer on the network can share resources, but none of them is centralized. It's not a client-server network. Now what we're actually going to be doing today is turning this from a computer on a peer-to-peer network into being a client on a client-server network, where the server is the one that we previously set up, the domain controller from the last video. Okay, I'm going to hit cancel there. Now before we start, I think it's very important to make sure that we are actually connected to the network, that everything's working fine, because if it's not, then from this point onwards things can go wrong. So what I'm going to do is just go Start, Run, and go to the command prompt. So CMD, click OK, and we get the command prompt. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ping the server and the server's IP address. Now the ping command is simple, ping, and then I just stick in the IP address of the server, and now if we can have a look here, it actually says destination host unreachable. So something's wrong with our connection. So I'm just going to do another command. Now the next command is ipconfig. It's all one word, ipconfig, and it actually tells us. Usually it would tell us what IP address we have, but it actually says media state cable disconnected. Now I actually did that earlier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the cable and plug it back in. Okay, and I'm going to do ipconfig again. There we go, and it's connected. Still it hasn't got an IP address. Usually takes a few moments to do that. I'll type in ipconfig again. There we are, we've got the IP address, so it's actually going to work. Now I'm going to ping the server again to see if it works. Okay, and now it says reply from, and it's the IP address of the server. So we now know that we have a connection, a direct connection between our computer, this client computer, and the server computer, the domain controller. So it means that there's a connection through the wires, through whatever hardware we've got between, and the networking hardware, so whether it's a switch, a hub, maybe some routers, we know that it's actually connected. Now that's very important from a networking point of view, and in fact any sort of problems, anything you do on the network, it's always a good idea to ping just to see if you are actually connected. So it's usually a first step. Now I'm going to exit that. We don't need the command prompt anymore. We can actually get doing what we're actually meant to be doing, which is turning this computer, this client computer, and actually joining it to the domain. Now it's relatively easy. We just go back to my computer, right click and go to Properties, and go to Network Identification, and this is where we were before, and you can see at the bottom here it says to rename this computer or join a domain, click Properties. So we just click this button here, Properties. and it's got the computer name, which is fine. We don't want to change that, but it's this box at the bottom here that we're interested in. It says a member of. At the top it says domain, the bottom here is workgroup. Now we're already a member of this workgroup called workgroup. We actually want to be a member of a domain. So I'm going to click domain, and I'm going to click the name of type the name of the domain in there. Now the domain that we created on the previous video was LRC, so I'm going to type LRC and click OK. Now what it wants to do is it wants to have a name and a password of an account that allows us to join the domain. So the administrator's password, and I'll click OK, and it's going to think about it. It's actually going to try and contact the domain. It's going to try and work out that is that username and that password, do they have sufficient privileges to allow us to join a computer to the domain. And it might take a while. Okay, and we've just got this pop-up box that says welcome to the LRC domain. So I'll click on OK. Okay, and it says you must reboot this computer for the changes to take effect. So I'm going to reboot the computer. And we're back again. The computer restarted and we logged in as the administrator again, and you can see it doesn't look any different. But let's go to my computer over here, right click and go down to properties and go to network identification, which is the second tab of the system's properties box. And you can see it says now full computer name Win2000, domain lrc.local. That is the name of the domain that we set up previously on the previous video of the domain controller. Okay, so we have actually made this client, Windows 2000 Professional, is now a client of the network. So we can actually manage user accounts, login, usernames centrally from the domain controller. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to teleport from Windows 2000 Professional over to the next operating system. So I'll see you there in a flash.